Well, good afternoon to everyone. This is the team at NJAAP, and we would like to welcome you to today's HPV Project ECHO cycle number 8 session, Maintaining Momentum, Sustaining Your QI Project. This virtual clinic is brought to you by the NJAAP through a cooperative agreement with National NJAAP. I'd like to move on to just a couple of brief housekeeping items. To protect the privacy, patient privacy, please make sure you're not providing us with any personal health information. We also want to let you know that the TeleECHO session is being recorded, and by participating in today's session you are consenting to being recorded. We appreciate and value your participation. If you have any questions at the end of this presentation, feel free to email the team, either myself or Jake, at the email addresses that are listed below. And so without any further delay, we'd like to also let you know that all microphones will be muted when not speaking. Please adhere to that. The microphone on-off switch is located at the lower left of your screen. If you're on the telephone, just do *6 to mute and unmute as we go through. It's great not to have any background noise as the programs are progressing. We ask you to speak clearly and to use the chat function to send messages. Do not put your phone on hold, because if you leave the meeting, we run the risk of hearing that music in the background. So, to begin, we'd like to do the practice introductions. So, Advocare West Deptford, who's represented there today?
We're there. We're there.
Hello.
You may be muted, Dr. Tony.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Can you hear us, Dr. Mishik?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hold on a second.
So we'll ask you, and we'll be working on that volume as we move on. We would ask you to send us either in the chat or an email of who else is present there from Advocare West Deptford. Next is Chestnut Ridge. So who's represented there today?
Hi, Larissa Pomar.
We see.
I'm here, Stacy Rosensquad.
Okay, again.
And Michelle Mayer. Sorry, I just figured out how to unmute it.
No, we're not getting any. So we'll just scroll through the others and work this problem. Ready for the presentation. What's most important at this point is to make sure that you can hear us. So while you're on, if you could just give us the nod, whether if you can't hear us, that would be great. Cooper Pediatrics. And the representatives there, of course, are Dr. Bright, Douglas Bright, Friedler, and Dr. Mahar. And Dorothy B. Hirsch is represented, Dr. DeBellis, Medina, and Babcock. And at Future Pediatrics, we have Dr. Rashid and Noreen.
Yep, this is Dr. Rashid. Dr. Fermin will be joining us shortly.
Terrific. We've got some sound there. That's always a bonus in a TeleECHO session. Jersey City Pediatrics.
Hi, how are you, Michael and Jack?
Thank you, Dr. Raha. Always a pleasure to hear your voice.
Thank you.
Rainbow Pediatrics.
Hello, hello, hello.
So, Rainbow, are you muted? Please check that, and we'll move on to the next. Rutgers Medical. Dr. Amados, Goodman, and Lerner. We actually had Dr. Lerner here in the office with us, so we know she is here. Next, Summit Medical Group Warren.
Dr. Rogers and Dr. Singer are here.
Terrific, thank you.
Did you hear?
And Waring, and now Westfield.
I'm here, Dan Herman.
Great. Is anybody with you, Dr. Harmon?
No, I'm at home. I'm not in the office today. Dr.
Okay.
Garcia, Levine, and Levine are in the office.
Thank you for joining. And finally, without any further delay, I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Dr. Stephen Carries. You all know Dr. Carries is the medical director of the New Jersey chapter American Academy of Pediatrics and well-versed on the maintaining momentum on QI projects.
Thank you, Michael. I'm going to spend a few minutes describing why I think this is an important topic. And what happens and what the literature shows is that QI does work and people do make changes, but the sustainability of those changes are often time limited, so that those studies, process. It's probably not surprising because what happens over time is that we become pricing problems, new staff gets hired, so there's all sorts of reasons why the momentum that was developed fall apart somewhat during as time passes by. But there are ways that work very, very well for you to take the changes that you have been working on and sustain them, have them be part of the new culture of the practice, not just a project that worked for a few people in the practice, but something that actually becomes part of the culture, part of the way of doing business for that particular practice. So that was like so let's get to the first slide. Thanks. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Oh, I'm doing myself. All right. So a few quotes that I'm sure Michael has something to do with, but we're going to move on. So here's the big deal. I'll give you the overview, and then we'll talk about the details. So as I said, if your goal is to take what you've developed and have it be something that covers the whole office or multiple offices and actually continues to happen over time, so that it's just part of the new way of doing business for your practice. Well, like I say, you cannot just expect it's going to happen. You have to be, in a very thoughtful way, working to make sure that the changes become part of the normal business. So that usually means four big steps. Each one of them takes some thought. They're not particularly complicated, but again, you have to be proactive, and you've got to think about it as really as part of your current QI cycle, so that it's almost like the last cycle of change for the QI project. So somebody's got to be the champion. Somebody has, maybe it's the person who's the current champion for the QI project, but somebody in that office setting has to be the one that has enough passion, enough eagerness to make sure this continues for the practice, to be willing to be seen as the team leader for the changes. So that's the first step. We'll talk about that more. Then you have to figure out some ways to make sure that the changes that you have developed become, as I say, part of the normal operating procedures for that office. No matter who's there, no matter who you have at the front desk, whatever nurse was there that day, whichever new doctors you hire, they're all part of this new culture of how you are performing this particular piece of your practice. Then you got to have some ways. Doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to take a long time, but some way just to keep measuring it, because it's very true that unless you're willing to keep it visible and in the mind's eye of people in the practice, it's less likely to survive. So you have to have some way of keeping it visible. Metrics are a good way of keeping it visible. And then you got to make sure that whoever is the senior leadership in the practice sees this as important and is willing to continue to support it, whether it involves EMR changes, whatever else needs to happen. So we'll go through some of those pieces in a little bit more detail. So in terms of ownership, again, just as with your QI project, somebody being a team leader, somebody's got to continue to be the team leader process owner to make sure this happens. Again, it doesn't have to be the doctor. It could be a nurse. It could be really the office manager. Somebody in the practice has to agree to be the one that keeps this alive in terms of keeping it visible, talking about it at team meetings, as you monitor some data, being the one that actually makes that data visible and available, and continues to tweak and change as things happen. So ownership is a critically important piece of this, and somebody, hopefully on the team or somebody in that practice, has to do that. Second piece is, again, part of this ownership piece. We talked about the visibility. So the more the changes are visible and aware to people, whether that's on a bulletin board or whether it's done as part of other sorts of communications or milestone awareness, as it's always important as part of visibility to celebrate it, to have a lunch or huddle sessions where you can talk about it and to share the successes. People like to hear about successes. They like to hear that the changes are making a difference for the way the patients and the families see the practice and the way the office sees itself, I think, in terms of those changes. So that's all about part of the visibility piece of the sustainability. And as I said, this may be in some ways the most critical piece. You have to have some way to have those changes institutionalized, immortalized for the practice. So if the front desk is now doing things differently than they used to do because of the changes, if the nurses are now being asked to do things that are different, the doctors are being asked to do things that are different, the office manager is asked to collect some EMR data that's different, it has to be part of their job description. So no matter who the front desk person is or who the office manager is, it's just part of their duties. It gets handed down and taught and discussed as people come and go into the practice, but it becomes, as I say, part of the new operating practices of your particular office. So it's involved with how you train new people, how you orient new people, how you write your descriptions, how you evaluate people. Again, unless that's done, then the chances of these changes surviving are not very high, because crises happen, other things occur, there's more pressures put on staff to do other things. It's very easy for things like this to slip. So think about that. Think about what you can do. You think this is important to make sure it's part of the way your office operates. Part of it also is making sure you have contingency plans. So if somebody's leaving, somebody's out for a while, who's going to cover. Again, as is true of any other part of your practice, you've got to figure out how you're going to cover whatever the new situation is, and make sure families are involved. You're doing this in part to improve the way that you work with your families and families work together. So again, this visibility, whether it's by having something in the rooms or some charts or whatever you need to do to let everybody know that this is a part of what you're doing in the practice. So that visibility is part of the hardwiring into what you do. Third is having some sort of metrics that, and again, doesn't have to be complicated, some sort of metrics that you can use to monitor that, in fact, this is happening not just for you, the doctor who cares about this, but for hopefully all the doctors in the practice, all the nurses in the practice. So some ways, and obviously with EMR, it's a little bit simpler, but some ways to be able to track what you're doing. You have one or two points that you think are important to keep visible, and then to track it into, have it available to show, particularly if the data shows slippage, to talk about why that's happening. Again, the biggest advantages of having some data is that you go from anecdotal ideas about what's happening to much more organized, concrete information about what's happening. So use that data to increase visibility, to talk about it at a meeting. Again, this does not have to be something that's overwhelming for the practice. It can be just even a few minutes a month sometimes, just to have it be part of the way that the practice looks at what it's doing. And then, as with everything, because senior leadership determines so much about how a practice works and where it goes for priorities. You know, making sure that senior leadership is well aware of this. Share your successes with them. Show them your metrics and your dashboard. Have them see this as really important work for the practice, and have them part of the celebration. So they really are part of this and support it and see it as part of what they want the practice to be from that point on. So those are the big issues. None of them are particularly complicated, but it does demand that you not just let it happen by chance, that you actually take a little time with your team before QI project is over to talk about these next steps and to make sure that for your practice you have some kind of a game plan to make these various pieces stay alive and be part of the way the practice works. So I think that's what I had to say.
That's terrific. Dr. Carries, thank you for taking the time to visit with us today and review this. And we will move on from that. Dr. Carries has another appointment that he's running out to quickly, so we'll just take literally a minute. Are there any specific questions that have either been entered into the chat box or by any of the presenters, anybody in the audience? Okay, so we'll
Thank
go
you.
from there. Thank you, Dr. Carries. So I'd like to now turn it over to Ruth to our favorite part of discussing data.
Great.
Could
Thanks
I
so much.
ask a quick
Okay,
question
Ruth, so
before we begin?
we're not
Can you hear me?
Yes.
hearing you.
Oh, okay. Are other
There we
people
go.
hearing me?
Yes.
Okay.
Could I
There's a
ask a quick
question.
question?
Sure. Go ahead.
Did we take roll call yet?
We did, Dr. DeBellis.
We did?
And
Debe-
We did. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No. All right. So I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss that. Okay. Sorry about that.
that's okay.
It's okay. We see your name on the
Okay. Wonderful.
screen,
Wonderful.
so we've got you counted. That's great.
Thank you very much.
And
Thank
anybody else who joined who didn't get a chance, please put in the chat box that you're here so you get credit. That would be great. So, and just one comment regarding the information about sustainability that Dr. Carries just shared with us. Really start thinking about that and include it as part of your next team meeting, because when you will be, there's a survey you're going to be asked to complete that'll be kind of a pre and post. And one of the, some of the questions have to do with what are you planning, what's your team, what's your practice planning to do in terms of sustainability. So now's a good time to talk among yourselves and craft that plan so that you can share that information as part of the survey. Okay, next slide, please. So again, we're looking at our measures that we've been tracking. This is the rate of HPV initiation. And last month we saw a slight dip. I'm not going to be concerned at this point. It was August. We know you had a lot of staff out, a lot of kids coming in for physicals and things. But that said, those were also additional opportunities with sports physicals and things like that. I encourage you to look at your data and the reasons for last month if you saw a change. The West Deptford team, when I looked at your data over the course of the project, nice increase since baseline from 14% initiation to 70%. Last month, you had that dip. But I think that if you look at your data, you're going to see that there's this a specific missed opportunity that seems to be causing some of the decrease that you experienced last month. So I would encourage you to all use your data. The Rutgers Medical Group, the first 4 months we saw a really nice, a steady incline in a number of initiations. And then there's been a decrease over the last few months. Wondering if you have identified the reason for that. I kind of think you have. And look, when I looked at missed opportunities, it looked like it had to do with type of visit in particular. And then we're going to hear from you today about something that you're doing, that you're testing to be able to look at other kinds of visits that patients are coming in for, such as the flu visits now. So we'll see how that impacts your data in the next cycle. Remember, everybody, too, there's only one more cycle of data that's being submitted. So really, I encourage you to think about that and focus your PDSAs this month based on what you're seeing. The Chestnut Ridge group, you know, there was a nice steady increase over 4 months and then a decrease the last few months. The missed opportunities, just like with the team from Rutgers, seems to be primarily related to vaccine HPV not being offered at certain visit types. And you too, I see are working and can share some of that information with us when we talk about the case presentation and PDSAs. And then one other team, the Summit Medical Group, both sites, Warren and Westfield, both teams have been kind of hovering on the lower third of the graph and related to some missed opportunities, whether it's postponement based on, you know, patients postponing vaccine. And so I hope that now you're thinking about making sure they don't leave without an appointment for coming back since they haven't declined, but also, you know, some refusal. Again, there's been, Westfield, you've been doing some good testing related to, you know, what you're saying, and I hope you'll share that during, when we talk in the later half of this session. Let's look at the next slide. I would like to say, as we move to the next slide too, that the Dorothy B. Hirsch, I mean, the Regional Diagnostic and Treatment Center, we know you weren't offering any HPV when we started this project, and now both initiation and completion rates are up to 50%. So, you know, really it's good to see how you're really incorporating this into visits that are not, you know, traditional well visits, because you're working hand in hand with the children's primary care providers. So that's been great to see. Looking at the completion rates, just want to point out, Future Pediatrics, you have had 100% completion rates for the last 4 months. So, you know, for trends, for QI, we usually look at 5 data points, but great to see what you've been doing in the last 4 months. Also, the Jersey City team, Dr. Raha, you have had both initiation and completion rates of 100% for the last 3 months. So good job. So as we look at the next slide with missed opportunities, you know, I was able to see Jersey City had no missed opportunities for the last 3 months. So therefore, that's the reason, you know, that their initiation rates and completion rates have been consistent. This is the overall missed opportunity rates. Again, they've been, you know, there's been a nice decline since initiation of the project. And last month, you know, we may find that is just random variation. But, you know, I really encourage you to look at your own data, your own run charts. And as we go through the individual missed opportunities, look at where you are when you look at your own data in terms of missed opportunities, so that you can focus your PDSAs on those missed opportunities that are specific to your practice. The next slide, the patient-parent refusal and decline rates for missed opportunities. those, looking at that, this is where the West Deptford team, the only reason that you had missed opportunities and that things that impacted your initiation or completion rate or your initiation rate last month really had to do with refusals. So there's some good things that I think we're going to hear from some of the other teams in terms of what they've been using for scripts that they're finding helpful that you may want to test doing in the coming months. Next slide. The refusals and postponement. This has been overall, a little variation, but kind of, at a certain level of missed opportunity. What I encourage you, again, is that at the visit that you're reporting on, it may have been postponed, but please make sure that that patient doesn't leave without a scheduled visit to come back. So maybe they didn't get it today, so it was a missed opportunity, but you can make sure this patient either starts or finishes their vaccine, HPV vaccine, in the next month or so. Next slide, contraindications. As we see, you all have a great handle on this, and that's not a reason for missed opportunities. And then the last slide, the other category. So I looked at other, so again, a bump up last month, but could be just random variation. But when I looked at those 20-some records that had you coded as it was an other reason, it's primarily due to either you didn't offer the vaccine based on the visit type, and as I said, that's what I saw with the Rutgers Medical Group data and the Chestnut Ridge team. So what are those visit types? And, are there opportunities to make sure that vaccine is either offered at that visit or that they're scheduled to come back if needed? And the other category was primarily that you didn't identify the patient was in need of that vaccine at this visit. And Cooper team, that was your primary reason for missed opportunities that were reported for the last cycle. So again, there's that chance to really focus your tests of change on those types of missed opportunities. And then you're going to see a bump up in your initiation or your completion rates. Just, remember, we're moving into the home stretch here. You all have a lot to celebrate the work that you've been doing. Make sure that your run charts for the last 8 cycles, post them, share them at your next staff meeting, put them in your lunchroom, talk about them, share them with your patients and families. As we said, make sure that you have a sustainability plan in place so that you'll be able to make that the improvements that you've made in HPV rates, initiation and completion won't end with this project. This is really only the beginning. So
thank you, Ruth.
Thanks.
I would like to add something here in any of the comment by any of the hub members. I would like for you to look at this particular slide. And while we're looking at a snapshot from month to month, we really don't know what the denominator is in terms of patient population within your practice. But I look at this and I see 78.9. And if we reflect back, or if you look back, to some degree, this trend is going to represent what's happening in general with the patient population at the practice. And when we see 78.9, and you compare that to what the completion rate is across the country for HPV, we're looking at a number, roughly about, Ruth, jump in when you want, but roughly about 46%, in terms of the numbers nationally of completing the HPV vaccination schedule are just very sadly low. And so one of the pieces that Dr. Carey's talked about earlier was celebrating the gains. And when I have an opportunity to talk about our program to outsiders of this, and I can say that within this project, that the aggregate number of the completion schedule was for nearly 80% of their population that fell within the realm of completing that. And that is just a fantastic accomplishment. And so to Ruth's point of using your data to inspire the rest, to make sure that we're translating this to all patients that are going to come in. And that's just on what's happening now. Ruth's point of addressing those missed opportunities and what that's going to happen here. I would love to be able to come back to all of the practices as we get halfway into Healthy People 2020 in the year 2020, and this group is over 80%. I just think that would be a remarkable accomplishment, and congratulations to all of you.
Yeah, and you know, the key is you're really getting them completed once they've been initiated. So you know, you have to work on both ends, but you're doing a good job. We can really see the impact. Now we have enough data, you know, if from cycle 2 to now, it's been 6 months. So we're overall seeing those kids that you may have started with vaccine, you know, at the beginning of the project, you're making sure that they're finishing the vaccine. So to keep that going too, remember that reminder recall functions in your registry, in particular, are a way to easily be able to identify who hasn't come back, who needs to come back to finish their series in a timely fashion. Yeah, I think that if you look overall, you know, I'm not looking at cycle 8, but from cycle 3 forward, really doing a great job as a group, the aggregate data, you know, pushing towards that 90% goal. So great job.
I have a comment just about, you know, looking at the stuff in general. And Ruth, I think one of the things I would highlight is the importance of just spreading the message to the team, because, you know, if the whole office is oriented towards improving HPV vaccine rates, just those little reminders, posting it in the lunchroom, posting it in the exam rooms, you know, it just helps build awareness. So sometimes I really think we just forget, you know, to offer it. And it looks like, you know, one of the cases I think also seems to highlight that. But I agree. I think that the completion rates are so much better than national average, and they're probably better than they were even a year ago. And I think we have to, you know, congratulate that. This is not going to happen like overnight. I think it's going to be a battle, like, you know, bit by bit, we're going to break down the barriers and gradually get more acceptance for this vaccine. And we've made a lot of progress, but I think we do have a little ways to go. But we have to break down barriers with ourselves as well as with the parents and the patients. And it's a tall order, but I think we've made a really good dent with the project. And I've been proud to see how the numbers have improved. So I think we should congratulate everybody.
Yep.
That's
Thanks,
my 2
Dr.
cents.
Brill. So let's hear about some of the strategies that and talk among ourselves in the next half hour. That would be great. Hear you.
No, I didn't have anything to add at this moment.
Okay.
I just was waving my hand. Sorry about that.
Okay.
We're going to have to charge extra for that, Dr. Mission.
That's fine. Just put it on my tab, okay?
Yes.
With everything else I get paid for. There you go.
Yes, sir. So I would be curious to know, Ruth, and maybe you can guide this. You know, we all know that the recommendation is at 11 to 13. How many of you participants, just chime in here, have started the process or are in the process of having moved this to 10 and possibly even 9?
West Deptford Peds has moved it to 10 years old. We've started this process at that point.
Fantastic. Others? Dr. Raha?
Yes, I have, as I mentioned before, that, you know, if it comes from the school, it makes our life a little bit more easy. We are discussing everything. We are telling the parents, we are giving the literature, we are telling that no, this is the vaccine has almost no side effects. All vaccine has the side effects, but no, it is no, I'm giving it for last, since the vaccine came in the market. But if the parents had that things in the mind, they are not going to vaccinate the kid against the HPV, they will not do it. And they will say, okay, I will now explore the things, but even they come back next time when I ask what you thought about it, they will say, no, I do not want to give the HPV vaccine. But if the school insists that is, vaccine is highly recommended, I think it will be much easier to vaccinate with the HPV vaccine. Nowadays, I'm not seeing only that refusal, but also as a total, I have last 2 or 3 months, I have couple of patients, newborn babies, they are against the vaccine. So you think about is HPV, it will be more difficult on our part to tell the parents, yes, you have to go ahead and do the vaccination. But and also they have, because my practice is a very small practice and I'm the solo practitioner. And if we try to push the vaccine, they think we are doing it for money. So if it comes from the school, it will be easier. And also they will think, okay, this vaccine most probably is necessary. So that's why I mentioned before that whether we can go to the individual school district and say that just highlight the HPV part that is being recommended.
I think we're pretty much all in agreement that it would certainly make life a lot easier, and in different areas we're pursuing that. But it is that's still yet to be a challenge to overcome. But I would like to take this opportunity, because you were talking there for a second, Dr. Raha, about the infertility dialogue that seems to continue on. And we will be depositing into the KETA system a couple of papers. We have to source these and get them put in. But it's an opportunity for us to share with all of the practices that make sure you take time to go in and look at the resources that exist in there now and will, for the next month and a little bit beyond that, to see if there are pieces in there that you'll be able to use to deal with the challenges that are being presented to you. And of late, there have been a number of studies that just absolutely lay to rest that infertility is not a side effect of the vaccination.
And as a GYN oncologist, I just wanted to add that there's more difficulty once you've had multiple surgeries for HPV-related disease on your cervix. So tomorrow I have a patient on my schedule who has cervical stenosis due to multiple leaps because of her prior history of HPV and abnormal pap smears and high-grade dysplasia. So there's actually good data showing that the treatment for HPV-related disease in the cervix can actually lead to difficulties getting pregnant if there's a lot of cervical stenosis, or difficulties maintaining a pregnancy because of cervical insufficiency as the cervix is shortened. So.
Thank
you, Dr. Varghese. And maybe we could connect offline to make sure that we have a line to that information so we can get that inserted into the information for the practices.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And this is Dr. Medina from the Dorothy B. Hirsch. I just wanted to say that it really has been working really well with the population, given that we have a high-risk population. Starting at age 9, it hasn't been very difficult for the parents to be willing to give that vaccine to the children. And I was thinking that because the RDTCs, most of them have check sites, which is the entrance or access that resource and foster children have for checkups. Most of us have access to vaccines, and that would be something to consider throughout the state of New Jersey to be able to catch this high-risk group. across the entire state.
Fantastic.
Dr. Medina, that's such a great point. Will you have an opportunity as part of the RDTC organization statewide to share some of your findings, yours and Dr. DeBellis's findings as participants in this initiative?
Yeah, actually, Dr. DeBellis has kept a file for this entire project, and we're meeting tomorrow, so I can definitely mention that.
That would be great.
I do believe, and we're just about at the minute mark, but as you may recall, I know Dr. DeBellis will, at the very beginning of this foray of including the RTDC, we talked about the potential impact for the other sites. And
yes.
Of course, you both know that I'll be bothering you forever so.
And this is Julia DeBellis. I wanted to just add that I really found success using the visuals, using the slides of the presentations from this project as helping to convince parents that this is an important vaccine. Just the one slide where it lists all the different types of HPV-associated cancers, that list of saying, look at all these cancers that this HPV vaccine can prevent, is really something that I think goes a long way. That the pictures say 1,000 words. Well, I have to tell you, the pictures of the graphs and even the picture of the little dog wearing the bike helmet goes a long way in helping to convince parents to get this vaccine. So don't forget those slides.
Thank you, Dr. DeBellis, and thank you to each one of you. I can't believe we only have one more cycle left, but nevertheless we do. So we hope you'll redouble your efforts as opposed to winding down the project prematurely. That being said, thank you to the members of the Hub, and thank you to the incredible work that's being accomplished at the practice level. And when you compare that to the national numbers, you should be enormously proud of your accomplishments. So, the data due for October 3rd for the next cycle, the case presentations due by the 10th, and our next session moving forward will be presented on the 17th from 12 to 1, and the presenters on the cases for that will be notified in the coming week or so. So once again, here's our evaluation link. Please jump on that and get that done right away. And with that being said, again, thank you for your joining us today. We hope this has been helpful, and we look forward to our next session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Yes, the newscast.